While my last attempt at this challenge wasn't exactly what I would call a success, I still thought it was worth another shot. After all, who better to take on this challenge than an older and more experienced Batman controlled by an older and more experienced me? Today our goal is simple: to beat Batman Arkham Asylum while gradually increasing the size of everybody by 0.01 for each knockout. To do this, I use this command in the cheat console. As always, check out this video by Mr. Just Arkham Games to figure out how to install the cheat console for yourself. Now, to make this easier on myself, I'll be holding off on increasing sizes until the ends of encounters, otherwise I'd just be dying in the middle of combat all the time. I also won't be counting the same enemies more than once, so if I take a thug out and then die, he only counts once even after being taken out again. I will say now that this is not my first attempt at the challenge, as I had previously attempted the same challenge, but by increasing Batman's size only. This ended up being a pretty uninteresting playthrough, so I decided that increasing everyone's size would be better. But before we can get into the challenge, there's a few things you need to know. After a long and arduous Twitter feud between Batman and the Penguin 8 years ago, things in Gotham City became quite heated. And in recent years, more have gotten involved in the Twitter feud. Recently, Joker even hired Scarecrow to poison Gotham's water supply with Titan, making sure that everybody would be at peak physical condition the next time the war left Twitter and hit the streets. The physical war had just started back up tonight, in fact, when the Joker, as usual, escaped from Arkham Asylum. The first group of thugs wasn't difficult in the slightest, considering nothing was different about anybody's size yet. Two thugs in the hallway and Zaz were enough to bring everybody's size up to 1.1, and to be honest, things still weren't feeling any different. The decontamination room was as easy as ever. After accidentally helping out the first guard, I completely skipped over the second, and did the same for the Blackgate inmate, saving myself a knockout. There are a few instances in Arkham Asylum where certain thugs or groups of thugs can be outright skipped, which is something I made sure to do whenever possible. This challenge went egregiously bad in Origins, so I wasn't taking any chances this time around. But with that, it was time to take on the first Titan Thug of the game. Seeing as how I literally never even tried to attack him, and the fact that he dies of a heart attack instead of me knocking him out, I decided not to count the first Titan Thug. But with him out of the way, I was able to talk to this guard, who showed me some random security footage from a few days earlier. It turns out that Officer Balls had been taking Titan this entire time, in hopes that Joker would let him join his army. Now, I hate Joker as much as the next guy, but was I going to let some lame-ass Officer Bald wannabe join his ranks? Of course not. That's a level of cringe not even my worst enemies deserve. So I picked up Balls' trail and made my way to the intensive treatment lobby. The six thugs here presented absolutely zero challenge, since silent takedowns, batarangs, and ground takedowns were more than enough to get rid of them. I even managed to straight up murder one of them. But with them out of the way, I was able to catch up to Officer Balls, who appears to have died from a Titan overdose. Not sure why he painted his face and strapped himself up like this before dying, but I guess that part just has to remain a mystery. I couldn't worry about Balls right now though. My focus for the time being was to track down the only people capable of counteracting the Titan, the doctors. The fight at the Batmobile wasn't any different than usual, so I made my way to the sanatorium, skipping as many fights and grabbing as many Riddler trophies to make up for the XP loss as I could. At this point, everyone was 1.34 times their usual size, meaning I had successfully passed the size that I failed at in Origins. Unfortunately, this was where this run failed. And the worst part? The issue wasn't even one of the usual culprits, like getting glitched into walls or anything like that. It was the fact that after clearing the 5 thugs in the sanatorium, the doctors refused to stand up and talk to me. No matter how many times I tried, and believe me, I tried a lot, they just wouldn't talk to me. So, as sad as I am to say it, I had to shift back down to normal size in order to progress. But just because this challenge wasn't successful, that didn't mean I wasn't going to keep going. My next task was to save the Arkham staff around the medical facility. First up was Dr. Young, who was exactly the same as always. Next was Dr. Chen, and this is where I started to see some of the major problems this run would have. On my first attempt at the fight, I managed to knock out all except for one guy, because the last thug took a page out of Batman's book and used the grates to hide from me. Yeah, so the increased size was now able to push people through floors after they ragdolled, presenting a few issues. Not only could encounters potentially become impossible like it did here, I also had to worry about thugs falling through the floor before I could count them. This meant that counting up thugs was the first thing I had to do from now on instead of just counting them all up at the end. And as if that wasn't enough, ground takedowns didn't always work for some reason. But despite all of this, I got through the encounter on my second attempt and saved Dr. Chen, leaving only the people in patient observation. I tried to skip these two thugs, but the game insisted that I take them down before entering the room to save Cash and the doctors. So, 2 knockouts later, I entered, turned on the first 2 fans, and then ran into a predicament. For some reason, the guy that's supposed to dangle from this rope wasn't there. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do without him, since I have to drop him onto this breakable roof in order to turn the last fan on. Luckily, cutting the rope still got the thug to break the ceiling via Bluetooth, allowing me to turn the last fan on and head back into the sanatorium. Having just saved all of the guards and doctors in the medical facility, I decided my best course of action next was to leave them all to die. So I went straight for the elevator when the Predator section started, and was on my way down. And it was here where I made a horrifying discovery. Gordon was dead. That monster Scarecrow had killed him. I tried to breastfeed him, give him some sustenance to help revive him, but it didn't work. Gordon was gone, and all I could do now was avenge him. So I opened some unusually large body bags and headed into the first Scarecrow nightmare, prepared to beat his ass. That plan didn't exactly pan out though, since he spawn camped me. But on my second attempt, I managed to spawn in without being instantly killed, allowing me to die in the same spot twice before somehow beating him the third time. With Scarecrow down, I headed back to the hallway, where I learned that Gordon wasn't actually the man I had been breastfeeding. Uncomfortable at the thought of a man under the age of 60 having suckled on my bat nipples, I quickly moved on to my next objective, finding and saving the real Gordon. Lucky for me, he was in the next room over. I snuck my way through the room on my first try, only to find at the very end that Gordon couldn't be saved. Usually you're supposed to take down Harley through this glass ceiling. However, due to her increased size, Harley spawned at a different spot than usual, making it impossible to do a takedown. I did try to blast my way down and then take her out, but that didn't exactly work. On my second attempt, I did make an interesting discovery about Harley's character model though. But once again, I had to size everyone down and go through the section as normal, defeating Harley and bringing me to Bane. And now I'm sure you can all see why I installed the Nightwing suit mod to remove my cape. For some reason, Arkham Asylum works different than Origins did. Instead of just removing the cape after reloading the game at an increased size, the game increases the cape's size at a very strange rate, causing it to flare out and cover the entire screen. The Nightwing mod was installed to help mitigate that, but unfortunately Batman's cape reappears here when using this mod and doesn't go away until you defeat Zsasz for the second time. This means we've got quite a while before the game becomes visible again. But there was no time to worry about that now. My focus was on Bane. Bane's first phase was easy enough considering it's exactly the same as usual. The second phase was where things got considerably harder though, as a ton of thugs entered the arena. On the plus side, I was fast enough when crouching to just walk around the room and avoid them, but this also caused some issues. Trying to avoid them made it more difficult to get Bane to charge at me, and my size didn't exactly help when it came time to punch Bane. The massive cape made it very hard to tell when I was about to get hit by a thug. Of course, my own greed didn't help, as I often got hit by Bane when punching him for chip damage. I did only die twice in this fight, but that isn't taking into account all the times I died during my first attempt at this challenge, which isn't exactly what I'd call a small amount. After defeating Bane, I increased my size by just 0.01, since even though I did counter a few of the thugs when punching Bane, I never touched them outside of that, and wasn't personally responsible for any of them being knocked out. Plus, if we're being honest, I don't think a building collapse is knocking them out. With Bane down and Gordon safely in the hands of one of Joker's thugs in disguise, I headed to the Batcave to see if I had missed any Twitter discourse. I could not believe the depths that the scum of Gotham had sunk into, spreading entirely true rumors about my proclivity to breastfeed those in need, speaking ill of my dead parents. Somebody had to stop these animals, and if Gordon was too much of a bitch to win the fight, I guess I was gonna have to be the one to do it. So, I grabbed the Batclaw and was on my way to the Arkham Mansion. On my way out of the sewers, I continued to grab as many Riddler trophies as I can. I knew from my previous attempt at this challenge that it was only a matter of time before I stopped being able to consistently hit enemies, so upgrades will be crucial in continuing the run. Combat still wasn't difficult by this point, but I could tell I wasn't far off from that being the case. Getting to the Arkham Mansion was exceptionally difficult though due to one major problem: snipers. On a good day, the snipers in Arkham Asylum are at least somewhat annoying. On a day where my cape covers half the screen and I move faster than Sonic when just walking, they become significantly worse than any other enemy type. I did manage to get into the Arkham Mansion without dying, but this wasn't without getting shot and having to use Riddler trophies to heal many, many times. It also helped that I had already gone through the pain of dying a million times here during my initial attempt at the challenge. But now that I was inside of the Arkham Mansion, my main goal was just to get to Zsasz as fast as possible and get rid of this cape once and for all. I mean, just look at this damn thing during the combat encounter in the hall. All in all, I still did really well here though, aside from a small hiccup at the end. Next up was the Predator encounter in the records room. This was actually very easy. I mainly stuck to the strategy of throwing Batarang and then doing a ground takedown on any thug that was alone, which got me through the encounter without ever taking damage. At the end, I even took advantage of the super strength that the Titan had granted me to throw this thug into the ceiling. After clearing the room, I talked to Cash, who told me this.
Where did Dr. Young go?
These guys came in looking for. I told her to offer else.
Now, I didn't get a recording of this part of the conversation, but Cash also told me that Dr. Young had notes on Twitter's source code, and said that if I managed to get my hands on them, I'd be able to blackmail Twitter into banning all of my enemies from the platform. Or maybe I could just convince them to tweet out the word sis. Either way, I figured that Dr. Young's office was a good place to start my search for her notes. Here I noticed that her account was still logged in on her computer, and saw that her most recent tweet came from the library, so I headed there to see if I could find her. It was on my way to the library where the problem I had been dreading the most popped up. My attacks had finally started missing. For some reason, when Batman's size is increased, at a certain point his attacks just stop consistently connecting. In my Arkham Origins video, I theorized that it's because even though everyone in the game is getting bigger, hitboxes actually aren't. So when Batman looks like he's properly spaced to hit a thug, he's actually too far. Whatever it may be that's causing this, one thing was for sure: it was extremely annoying and made combat a lot more difficult. On the bright side, after taking down these 4 thugs, I had officially made it to over double my normal size. My cape had only continued to become more obnoxious, however. It was to the point where I had increased my field of view and was using first person mode just to navigate. But after a not at all quick and extremely annoying combat encounter in the library, I got a hold of Dr. Young's notes, only to find that they were actually notes on Titan. Oh right! I'm supposed to be taking care of the Titan problem! Well, before I could do that, I had to go up against Scarecrow once again. I did have a small issue when the game switched me from Batman to Crying Boy Bruce, as I got stuck in the floor and was unable to move. Maybe this was just an extreme effect of the fear toxin, forcing Bruce to literally be trapped in the alley with his dead parents. Whether it was or not, simply reloading and trying again fixed the issue for some reason, allowing me to go into the second Scarecrow nightmare. Once again, Scarecrow pulled out the classic strat of spawn camping me on my first attempt. I'd like to say that just like the last nightmare, this was the only issue I ran into, but unfortunately, Scarecrow's field of view was just way too distorted from his size. Maybe this is possible somehow and I just didn't have the patience to figure it out, but considering I've already failed the challenge about 100 times, I don't think it matters that much. Plus, when even a camera this zoomed out was being affected by the size of my cape, I just wanted to take down Zsasz and let this damn thing disappear again. And with Scarecrow down, it was finally time to get to Zsasz. And once again, I had to size myself down. I genuinely don't know if I'm just timing this wrong, or if it's impossible to do while this size. But in both my first attempt at this run and this attempt, I failed over and over again to take down Zsasz while big, only to size down and then immediately get it on my first try. I don't really care either way since we're far beyond this challenge being valid at this point. I'm really just glad the cape is gone. This joy was almost immediately undone though, when I remembered that I still couldn't consistently hit thugs. By this point, everyone was 2.28 times their normal size, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to finish the entire game. So, I set a new goal. Winning the Twitter war was no longer my endgame. Now, I just wanted to help the people of Gotham by taking down Joker's Titan production plant. This meant my next order of business was to find and take down Harley, but that was a lot easier said than done. I had to lure thugs away from doors to skip knocking them out, evade snipers, and fight through large groups that I couldn't even hit with my attacks half the time. But after a while, I made it to the main cell blocks, where I discovered that some of the lunatics were so big that they had spawned outside of their cells. Luckily, this didn't mean they could attack me, so I just walked past them and talked with Ivy, who after a short conversation decided to re-enter her cell on her own. The fight in the main cell block against all of Harley's men was annoying to say the least. I always seemed to get 2 hits in on a combo, only for the third to miss. And even when I got a combo started, it was never long before an attack would whiff. But through the power of spamming gadgets, restoring my health through upgrades, and getting lucky enough to start a combo, I made it through one of the most annoying experiences I've ever had in a challenge. Despite the massive limitations to my combat prowess, I was starting to notice a few perks, such as my ability to shove lunatics straight through the ground, or Harley's chest being pressed against the glass in the guard room. Speaking of the guard room, Harley's trap proved extremely ineffective, as the guards she had captured were already knee-deep in the water, twerking with 0 adverse side effects. This made freeing them a lot less stressful. So once they were free, I had a private chat with Louis Green to discuss my feelings about his twerking, and was then on my way to take down Harley once and for all. And this fight went a lot better than the past few for one main reason: the complete lack of railings on some parts of the map. There wasn't really a need for me to hit any of the thugs when I could just use batarangs and evades to send them flying down a bottomless pit. So I took down all 17 thugs, locked up Harley, and was on my way to the Botanical Gardens to search for Joker's Titan Lab. The obscene number of lunatics roaming the island made getting there quite difficult. My cape covering them in detective mode also made for some decent horror moments. But through a mix of luring them away from doors, knocking a couple out, and some careful routing, I made it into the Botanical Gardens. In a comical show of everyone's size at this point, the first 2 thugs here were knocked out very easily. One I hit with a batarang to knock into the electric fence, and the other actually backed into it just by doing a basic animation. Hacking was getting fairly difficult by this point, since I couldn't see the cryptographic sequencer anymore. So I got the power amplifier upgrade, and to be honest, I never realized how much easier this upgrade makes hacking. The Botanical Gardens Predator encounter started out amazing, since apparently I hadn't learned my lesson about trying to use grates in the final offer, resulting in me getting banned to the Shadow Realm. My next attempt I made sure to grapple to a gargoyle instead. My usual strategy of throwing batarangs and doing ground takedowns was as useful as ever. Even the power of spin jitsu wasn't enough to stop me from mutilating these thugs beyond belief. After this was the combat encounter in the Glasshouse generator room, and at this point in the run, my combat skills were about on par with a Skyrim follower in terms of being useless. There was simply no way to consistently connect hits. I knew my strategy had to change, so I adopted Moon Knight's strategy and started doing random bullshit. Using the Batclaw to set a thug up for a ground takedown was my best move, but there were also a number of thugs who just disappeared or died for seemingly no reason. The game had completely devolved into a nearly unplayable form, and I was just glad that I wouldn't have to deal with the torture for much longer. But with these thugs down, I made my way towards the aviary, realized I forgot to actually shut the generator off, went back to shut down the generator, and then was on my way to the aviary again. For real this time. Making it there was a challenge though, as 2 main obstacles blocked my path. The first was this breakable wall, which I couldn't properly place explosive gel on. For whatever reason, the gel kept placing far away from the wall, and no matter what I tried, it wouldn't destroy it. So I had to size myself down for that. The next obstacle was this entire area. Upon first entering, the animation of walking through the door put me through the ground and out of bounds. A simple reload fixed this, but the same couldn't be said for this climb. I kept trying to find ways to get back in bounds after clipping out, but eventually the thing that worked was just using my height boost from the first climb to grab the second ledge. From here I could just grapple this vent and continue as normal. Well, as normal as this is at least. Speaking of normal things, the aviary predator encounter was anything but that. At the beginning of the encounter, you have to climb through this vent. For obvious reasons, this presented an issue. Luckily, it wasn't a huge issue though, since by just jumping off the ledge, I could grapple up to save myself. This entire stealth section really showcased the fact that vision cones and hitboxes aren't really affected by the increased size, since if they were, I definitely should have been spotted here. Anyways, I killed most of the thugs here and was ready to finally take down Joker's Titan Lab. He and my other foes may have won the Twitter war for now, but there was no way I was going to let him win the war for Gotham. So I went into the Titan lab and put a stop to his madness. The two Titan thugs actually weren't that hard, but they were a bit annoying. Their increased size meant their hitboxes were a little wonky, so punching them wasn't always possible. The more annoying part about their hitboxes though was that I could rarely use one to hit the other, which made dealing damage to them a lot slower than usual. This was slightly made up for by the extremely large guards they were throwing at me being incredibly funny, so at least there's that. I did die once here to a stupid mistake, but all in all it wasn't that bad. So I beat down Joker's Titan thugs, increased my size to 2.95, increased my field of view to show you all the magnificent size of Batman at this point, and proved that no, you cannot beat Batman Arkham Asylum if every knockout makes everyone bigger. Even if the challenge failed very quickly and only made it halfway through the game, it was still a lot of fun and a very interesting experience. I can't wait to see how City and Night will treat this challenge. If you made it this far in the video, thank you. Please like, comment, subscribe, or maybe even consider becoming a channel member. Special thanks to TJ Tracker, my first channel member. Also be sure to check out my streams, as I've recently started streaming on this channel. That's all I've got for now. See ya.